Welcome to the Silent Screams, where the quiet isn't peace. It's a warning. Every story you'll hear here is said to be true, whispered by those who lived to tell it, and by those who didn't. So turn off the lights, put on your headphones, and listen closely, because the things you're about to hear aren't just stories, they're the echoes of real nightmares. Pause. Faint sound of a distant scream, then whisper. This is the Silent Screams.
Somewhere along Route 19, there's a diner that shouldn't exist. It burned down 60 years ago, took 4 people with it. But every year, on the same night, someone swears they've seen its red neon lights glowing through the fog. Truckers call it the Hollow Creek Diner. They say the coffee's always hot, the jukebox still plays, and the waitress, she still remembers your name. This isn't just another ghost story. It's a real legend, one that's haunted Pennsylvania highways for decades. Tonight, we'll follow the trail of those who stopped there, the journalist who vanished, the driver who brought back a receipt from 1962, and the patrolman who caught the impossible on camera. This is the story of the Vanishing Diner. And if you're driving tonight, keep your eyes on the road, because you might see those lights too.
The first thing you notice about Route 19 isn't its length or the endless fields of rusted wheat that stretch across Pennsylvania's heartland. It's the silence, the kind that presses against your ears until your thoughts become too loud. No birds, no traffic, no sign of life, just the hum of tires on cracked asphalt and the occasional whisper of wind through the trees. It's a stretch of highway forgotten by time, swallowed by decades of fog and bad memories. Local truckers call it the road that time forgot. It cuts through the backbones of ghost towns that no longer exist on modern maps. Ridge Hollow, Black Creek, Hollow Bend, each reduced to foundations, rotting barns, and names that only old men remember when they've had too much whiskey. And yet, the road feels watched. Every few miles there are strange markers, half-buried signs too rusted to read, a telephone pole snapped in half like something massive had fallen against it, or a single diner menu pinned under the windshield wiper of an abandoned car, the kind of details that make you wonder who left them and how long ago. Most travelers avoid this route after dark. GPS signals flicker, compasses spin, and the fog rolls in thick enough to swallow your headlights whole. Those who've driven it say the mist doesn't move naturally. It clings to the road like it's alive, parting only when it wants you to see something. But for some reason, on certain nights, when the air turns wet and the sky glows an odd red near the horizon, the silence breaks. Out there, between mile markers 143 and 151, there's said to be a diner, a real one, chrome walls and all, humming softly with the sound of life. People call it the Hollow Creek Diner. They say it shouldn't exist anymore. But when you're driving through that fog, hungry, tired, and half dreaming of coffee and warmth, you might see its red neon lights shimmering in the distance. Some drivers stop. Some drive faster. But the ones who stop never make it out of the fog again. Locals still whisper about it, even though there's nothing left of the Hollow Creek Diner. No building, no signs, no trace of chrome or neon, just an empty patch of ground along Route 19, cracked and overgrown with weeds. If you didn't know the story, you'd drive right past it without a second thought. But those who do know slow down, sometimes even cross themselves as they pass, because everyone in Hollow County knows what used to stand there and what sometimes still appears on foggy nights. The diner had been the heart of a small town once, back when truckers filled the booths, teenagers shared milkshakes under the jukebox light, and farmers came in at dawn for black coffee and pie. The Hollow Creek Diner was where everyone gathered. Then came the explosion. In April of 1963, a propane leak ignited in the kitchen during the night shift. The flames spread so fast that no one made it out. The owner, Frank Lawson, his wife Marlene, and 2 regulars died instantly. The fire was so hot, it melted the aluminum siding and sent shards of glass into the highway. When firefighters arrived, the building was already collapsing in on itself, its neon sign still glowing red through the smoke, as if refusing to die. They said Marlene was found near the counter, the phone receiver still in her hand, calling for help that never came. That image stayed with people for decades, haunting every retelling of the story. The site was cleared years later, but strange things began to happen. Travelers on Route 19 started reporting the diner's lights flickering through the fog, jukebox music faintly drifting through the air, even the smell of frying bacon when there was nothing around for miles. Some said they saw people inside, figures frozen mid-motion, like mannequins in a photograph. Others swore they went in, ordered coffee, and left with a receipt dated 1962. The police dismissed it as ghost stories, but the locals knew better. They said the diner never burned down. Not really. It just moved to another time. And sometimes, when the night is thick and the fog is alive, Route 19 lets it come back. Evelyn Moore wasn't the type to chase ghost stories. She was 32, sharp-minded and fearless, known for tearing apart local legends with a pen and a microphone. Her voice was the kind that could calm an argument or corner a liar. To her, myths like the Vanishing Diner were just small-town distractions, old stories recycled by bored truckers and lonely bartenders. But when her editor tossed the Hollow Creek file on her desk, she hesitated. Inside the folder were 30 years of police reports, all eerily consistent. Missing persons, identical witness descriptions, recurring dates. Every few years, someone vanished between mile markers 143 and 151. Always in April, always at night. Evelyn didn't believe in curses, but she believed in patterns, and this one felt intentional. She began her research the old-fashioned way, visiting libraries, interviewing retirees, scanning microfilms. Every person she spoke to said the same thing: don't drive that road after dark. One old waitress even grabbed her wrist and whispered, "If you see the diner lights, don't stop, just keep going." Evelyn laughed it off at the time, but that warning stuck in her mind like a splinter. By April 10th, she had decided to see it for herself. She borrowed a recorder, packed a thermos of coffee, and set out from Pittsburgh just before sunset. The fog rolled in quicker than she expected, thick, suffocating, alive. She hit the record button as soon as the mist swallowed her headlights. "This is Evelyn Moore, Route 19, 10:15 p.m. Her voice crackled through the tape. "Visibility's dropping fast. Locals say this is where the diner should appear. Personally, I think..." A pause. Then, "Wait, I see something ahead. Red light, like neon." The tape hissed with static. She described what she saw: a chrome building glowing faintly through the fog, its sign reading Hollow Creek Diner. She even chuckled, saying it looked like a movie set, perfectly preserved from another era. She parked and stepped out, her recorder still running. That was the last time anyone heard her voice alive. When her car was found 3 days later, the recorder was still on the passenger seat, battery dead. The last sound it captured was faint music, maybe something old, maybe from a jukebox, and a woman's voice softly saying, "Welcome back, sweetheart."
The police never officially released Evelyn's recording, but a copy leaked years later through a retired officer who couldn't sleep without hearing it replay in his head. It began normally enough: engine noise, windshield wipers, her steady voice describing the fog. Then, without warning, the sound warped. The air seemed to vibrate through the tape, as if the world itself was distorting around her car. 11:02 p.m., Evelyn said, her tone a mix of disbelief and awe. "There's light ahead. I see... God, it's real! The Hollow Creek Diner! Chrome walls, red neon, just like the photos!" There was a pause, followed by the sound of her car door creaking open. Then, silence, except for the faint hum of electricity and what might have been music. Elvis Presley, maybe, playing from a distant jukebox. "It's open," she whispered, her voice trembling now. "I can see people inside. A waitress at the counter. A man in uniform. Maybe a cop? They all look still, like they're waiting for something." Static flooded the recording. Beneath it, faint whispers rose and fell, words that couldn't be made out, like a dozen overlapping conversations spoken underwater. When the sound cleared, Evelyn's breathing was heavier, faster. "Something's wrong. I tried to talk to them. They don't move. They just stare." The waitress asked what year it was, and when I told her, she started crying. The tape hissed violently then, as if the device was being shaken. A metallic crash echoed through the fog, perhaps the door slamming shut. Evelyn screamed once, but it wasn't fear. It was confusion, like someone waking from a dream. "They keep saying I've been here before, that I came for the coffee, that I promised I'd stay this time." The last 30 seconds of the tape were nearly intelligible. The background noise morphed into rhythmic static. Click, click, ring, as if mimicking an old telephone. Then came the faint clink of a coffee cup being set down, and a woman's voice, calm and sweet. "Welcome home." A loud burst of static followed, then silence. The audio ended at 11:44 p.m. Experts analyzed it for years, claiming interference, hoaxing, or degradation. But sound engineers found something they couldn't explain. Embedded within the static, repeating, faint but measurable, was a voice whispering, "April 12th, again and again." The exact date the diner burned down. When the search team finally found Evelyn's car, it was sitting on a dirt turnout near mile marker 147, the same stretch of Route 19 where countless others had disappeared. The fog was still thick that morning, so heavy that officers said it felt like walking underwater. Her car was unlocked, keys in the ignition, headlights off, and the radio dial turned to a dead frequency that hissed softly in the silence. There were no signs of a struggle, no footprints leading away, no fingerprints on the door handles, no indication she'd ever left the driver's seat. But what unsettled investigators most wasn't what was missing, it was what was left behind. The inside of the car was damp, coated with a thin layer of condensation on the inside of the windows. A half-drunk cup of coffee sat in the cup holder, still warm when they found it, though by then more than 36 hours had passed since she vanished. Her recorder was in the passenger seat, dead battery, and an empty cassette sleeve labeled Route 19 Field Log. The evidence team collected everything, but something strange kept happening during processing. The coffee cup, the recorder, the cassette, all three, logged under case number 19-043, began to degrade at an unnatural rate. The plastic warped, the ink bled, the cassette tape melted slightly as if exposed to heat, even though they were stored in controlled conditions. The forensic report noted, material deterioration unexplained, not consistent with environmental exposure. Two officers who handled the case claimed their radios began picking up strange interference after they logged the evidence. One described it as a woman humming an old song through the static. Another swore he heard his own name whispered between bursts of white noise. Within weeks, both requested transfers. When the investigation stalled, Evelyn's disappearance was officially ruled accidental exposure and presumed death. Her file was sealed, locked away in the county archives. But before it was closed, one detective added a handwritten note to the bottom of the report. Recorder contains unknown voice, female, mid-30s, matches missing subject. Final phrase transcribed as, "Coffee still hot." The box containing her evidence vanished 6 months later. The clerk on duty swore she'd filed it herself, but it was gone. No records, no signatures, no trace, just an empty shelf in a locked storage room. That's when locals started saying the same thing again. The diner doesn't take people, it just brings them home. It happened on a cold April night in 2011, the kind of night when fog swallows everything and headlights feel like candles in a storm. Truck driver Bill Hanlon had been hauling freight from Cleveland to Harrisburg for 20 years, and he knew Route 19 better than anyone. He had driven it so many times that he could name every curve, every rest stop, every flickering streetlight. But that night, he saw something that didn't belong there. His logbook said he was approaching mile marker 147 around 2:15 a.m. He radioed another driver to complain about the fog. It was so thick it looked like smoke. His partner on the other end laughed and said, "You're near Hollow Creek. Don't stop for pie." It was an old joke among the long-haul guys, a reference to the ghost stories that every trucker told but none believed. Bill chuckled back. Then the laughter died in his throat. Out of the fog, a red glow appeared ahead, soft at first, then bright enough to cut through the mist. He slowed down, squinting. The shape of a building emerged. Chrome siding, curved windows, the unmistakable outline of a 1950s diner. Above it, a neon sign flickered through the haze. Hollow Creek Diner. Bill swore under his breath. It looked like brand new, clean, polished, lights humming. A classic Chevy was parked out front, its chrome spotless, reflecting the diner's red glow. He figured it must be a film set or some retro restoration project, but something in his gut twisted when he noticed the air. The fog didn't move, it just hung there, heavy and unmoving, like the whole world was holding its breath. He pulled in anyway. Habit, maybe. Or curiosity. He stepped inside, and the first thing that hit him was the smell. Coffee and bacon grease, fresh like breakfast hour rush. The jukebox in the corner played a soft tune, Can't Help Falling in Love. The booths were full, the customers smiling politely. They all looked normal, but too perfect, too still. A waitress walked over, hair in a 1960s bun, blue uniform spotless. Her name tag said Marlene. "Coffee, sweetheart?" she asked. Her voice was warm, but something about her eyes felt wrong, like there was no reflection in them. Bill nodded. She poured. He took a sip. It was hot, real. Then, when he reached for his wallet, she smiled and whispered, "You already paid last time." The lights flickered. The song skipped. When Bill woke up, the diner was gone. He was sitting in the middle of an empty lot, his truck engine idling. His coffee cup was still in his hand, but it was cracked, bone dry, and covered in dust. He never took Route 19 again.
A week after the encounter, Bill Hanlon tried to convince himself that what he'd seen on Route 19 had been a hallucination brought on by exhaustion. But then he looked at the receipt. It had been crumbled in his jacket pocket, half soaked from the fog. When he flattened it out, the paper felt strange, thicker, brittle, as if it had aged decades in a few days. Across the top, printed in faded red ink, were the words Hollow Creek Diner, Route 19. Below it, neatly typed, coffee, $0.25, pancakes, $0.75. The date read April 12, 1962. At first, he laughed. Maybe someone planted it as a prank. But the more he stared, the more the details unnerved him. The logo design that hadn't been used since the early 60s, the tax number that didn't match any current registry, the faint grease stains that still smelled of maple syrup. It was real, or had been once. He showed it to the highway patrol, to the Diner Museum in Pittsburgh, even mailed a copy to a paranormal radio show. No one could explain it. The paper tested as authentic to the era. The ink had chemically degraded the way old ink does. One lab claimed it couldn't have been printed on modern machinery. Another refused to issue a statement at all. Within weeks, other drivers began reporting something new. Their CB radios would hiss with interference near mile 147. Then a woman's voice would slip through the static, soft, southern, endlessly patient. "Coffee's on, sweetheart. Table 4's waitin'." Then a burst of static so loud it made their ears ring. Some truckers pulled over and found nothing but fog. Others swore they saw a flicker of red neon through the mist before the light vanished. Bill stopped driving nights altogether. He kept the receipt locked in a tin box under his bed, wrapped in plastic like an artifact. Years later, his wife found him sitting at the kitchen table at 3 a.m., staring at the paper under a lamp. He told her the ink was darker now, that the date had changed. When she looked, it hadn't, but Bill swore that every time he blinked, the numbers shifted, like the diner was still open somewhere, printing another bill. He died in 2019. The box was empty when they went through his things. Her name was Marlon Lawson, the last known waitress of the Hollow Creek Diner. In the old photographs kept by the Hollow County Historical Society, she's smiling behind the counter, hair tied in a neat bun, eyes bright with that small-town warmth you don't see anymore. The photo is dated April 9th, 1963, 3 days before the fire. After that, no one ever saw her alive again. But they still see her. Every story about the diner, every encounter across the decades mentions her, the woman in the blue uniform, always polite, always calm, always offering coffee. She looks young, early 30s, though the diner burned down over 60 years ago. Her uniform is spotless, her lipstick a faded cherry red. But her eyes never quite meet yours. Locals say Marlene was the kind of woman who worked herself to the bone to keep the diner open after her husband Frank fell ill. She'd serve truckers until sunrise, singing along to the jukebox while mopping the floor. On the night of the fire, she was the only one who didn't run. Witnesses said they saw her at the window shouting for someone, maybe Frank, maybe one of the customers, to get out. The phone line stayed open until it melted in her hand. After the diner's destruction, strange reports began surfacing from travelers. A woman matching Marlene's description was seen along the shoulder of Route 19, holding a coffee pot, waving to cars as if the night shift never ended. One driver claimed she knocked on his window, asking, "Honey, ya hungry?" When he blinked, she was gone, but his cup holder was filled with lukewarm coffee. Those who've met Marlene describe an eerie familiarity. She calls them by name, even if they never introduce themselves. She remembers things she shouldn't, what they're hauling, where they're headed, even who's waiting at home. Her kindness feels comforting, almost hypnotic. But there's one rule everyone learns the hard way. Never mention her husband. Because when you do, her expression changes. The smile drops, the air thickens, her voice turns hollow, and she whispers, "He's still cooking in the back." That's when the lights flicker, the music stops, and every exit disappears into fog. Some say she's trapped in a loop, serving the dead over and over. Others believe she's keeping the diner alive, feeding its souls instead of customers. Either way, if you see her standing by the road in her blue uniform, don't stop, don't wave, don't look in her eyes. Because once Marlene notices you, the diner does too. The official report was buried in a Pennsylvania Highway Patrol archive under unverified visual anomaly, but copies still circulate among troopers who pull the late shift on Route 19. The incident occurred on April 12, 2019, 56 years to the day after the Hollow Creek Diner fire. At 2:46 a.m., officers Dawson and Reyes were running a routine fog patrol sweep. Their dashcam footage shows nothing at first, just the rolling haze, the rhythmic hum of the cruiser's engine, and the occasional flash of reflective road markers. Then, without warning, the mist thickens. The camera shakes as the car slows, and there, through the grainy distortion, a faint glow blooms ahead. Red neon. "Do you see that?" Dawson asks on the audio. Reyes doesn't respond at first, only mutters, "What the hell is a diner doing out here?" The footage captures it for exactly 7 seconds. The outline of a chrome building materializes in the fog, arched windows, glowing signage, and a flickering Hollow Creek Diner marquee. The radio crackles violently, drowning out their voices with a burst of static that almost sounds like laughter. Then, as abruptly as it appeared, the light collapses into darkness. The car's electrical system flickers. The camera resets. For a moment, they're plunged into silence, their dashboard lights dimmed to blood-red glows. When power returns, they're parked on an empty road. No sign of the diner, no light, no sound. The fog clears like a curtain being pulled away. They file their report an hour later, shaken. Dawson insists he saw figures inside, shadows moving behind the diner's glass. Reyes refuses to confirm nor deny it. He only notes that the cruiser's clock displayed the wrong time when they got back to base, 2:47 a.m., April 12. The same timestamp seen in every prior account tied to the diner. Weeks later, the department's IT division reviewed the footage. They found something impossible. A reflection in the windshield, an interior shot of a woman pouring coffee, her face turned toward the camera. Her name tag read, Marlene. The video was quietly archived. The officers transferred shortly after. No one patrols Route 19 at night anymore. Because every year, right around April, dispatch receives an anonymous transmission from an unregistered frequency. A woman's voice, calm and distant. "Coffee's fresh, officers. Come in and warm up." Then, static. It was April 12, 2023, exactly 60 years since the fire. At 11:57 p.m., the local AM station WQPR 730, known for its late-night paranormal call-in segment Whispers After Midnight, received a transmission that froze everyone in the control room. Ray, the host, had been on air for over a decade, taking ghost stories from sleepless truckers and lonely insomniacs. But that night, his show became part of the story it was built to tell. Ray's voice on the tape starts casually enough. He says, "Line 2, you're on the air," chuckling. A woman's voice answers, soft, polite, faintly southern. "Good evening, dear. Long night out there?" At first, Ray thinks it's a prank. He asks, "Who's this?" She replies sweetly, "Hollow Creek Diner. Open all night." The room goes still. A few producers glance at each other, half smiling, thinking it's a listener referencing the old legend. Ray plays along. "You're calling from the diner?" A pause, then static. Through it,
When investigators reviewed the recordings from Route 19, they all heard the same thing beneath the static. A woman's voice, calm and gentle, saying, "Coffee still hot." The Hollow Creek Diner was never rebuilt, but the lights still appear every April. Maybe it's just fog playing tricks. Maybe it's something that refuses to fade. Because every time someone disappears out there, the diner's sign flickers back on, and the smell of coffee drifts through the fog again. If you ever find yourself on Route 19 after midnight, and you see that red glow through the mist, don't stop. Don't look back. Just keep driving. Thank you for listening to The Silent Screams. Subscribe if you're brave enough to hear the next story, because on these roads, some stories never end.